On the Security Weekly News, I try to scan and produce a quick look at some of the major stories to help you keep up with what's going on in and around the industry in a short format. Myself, Aaron Leyland, Josh Marpet, and other guest commentators provide greater insight every week. I'm Doug White, and I hope that you'll look for the Security Weekly News in all of your favorite podcast catchers and subscribe for the latest content.
Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Google has announced that they will be shutting down the Google Podcast platform in mid-2024. We were all shocked. To ensure that you don't lose access to the Security Weekly content you know and love, please make sure you subscribe to some other podcast somewhere else. We're literally everywhere: Spotify, YouTube Music, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Podcast Addict, Pocket Cast, probably whatever you use, you can find us there. You can visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to make it easy to subscribe to one of those. If you don't already, we'll have a bunch of buttons there. And make sure you don't lose access to us when Google Podcast goes away. On the evening of Monday, May 6, 2024, at RSA Conference, W2 Communications and Cyber Risk Alliance are bringing cyber tacos back to San Francisco. If eating free tacos, sipping on margaritas, and mingling with cyber professionals from all over the world sounds good to you, make sure to register to secure your spot. Visit securityweekly.com/cyber tacos to RSVP today. Tacos, cyber tacos. Now for the Enterprise Security Weekly News, check out securityweekly.com/ESW357 if you want to follow along as we go through the news, or for links to the articles we're covering. And we have with us Mr. Tyler Shields. How you doing, Tyler?
Tacos, more tacos. I loved it. What an intro. Well played.
Yeah, having a lot of fun with the intros today. What was you miss all the goofy stuff at the beginning these days, Tyler, by not being on the first segment. Today was National 8-Track Tape Day.
Do you have any? Do you own any 8-track tapes?
Nope. Nope. I don't think I've ever handled an 8-track tape.
I did. My parents' car, when I was growing up, my parents' car had an 8-track tape in it. They had a Kenny Rogers 8-track, and that's the only one I remember. There were 2 or 3 of them sitting in the console of the car. I remember it distinctly.
Yeah, it was, I mean, when I was, maybe it's a difference in age, but it was all compact cassettes. Everything we had in the car, at home, all compact cassettes. And I was looking it up, and compact cassette actually hit the market a year before 8-tracks did. 8-tracks were really only there for like 15 years, something like that. They came into the market and went right back out.
Yeah, I saw them there. I was little. I couldn't have been older than 5. It's just one of those memories in my dad's old big Buick or whatever he had. There was 2 or 3 8-tracks. I remember Kenny Rogers being one of them, and he would sing along to that, and it's like, oh my God, Dad, stop. Keep your day job.
Nice. All right, we got some interesting stuff in the news today. Our first one here in the intro, when I read this out, I said Sierra is our latest cybersecurity unicorn, maybe? Because didn't we say 1.4 billion, like $1 billion isn't going to quite get you to unicorn territory anymore?
I guess it depends on how you define unicorn, right? Is
Right.
unicorn? I heard the new unicorn, according to the person Eileen Lee, the lady that coined the term unicorn from Cowboy Ventures. She was the first one to ever use that term. She recently said that the new unicorn number is either 3 or 4 billion. I can't remember which one she said. You have to be the 3 to 4 billion to be a new unicorn. And she didn't want to coin a new term to cover it either. She thought it should just readjust the name of it.
I don't think you should. Like it's just it's like inflation, right? You don't rename the currency. That's just a new norm, and it's that's official enough for me, coming from the person who coined the term in the first place. I'm pretty sure you're allowed to change your mind and adjust the definition as needed.
Yeah, and she did. So yeah.
So
yeah, it's a unicorn-ish. We'll put that on there.
Still, I mean, big milestone, right? $300 million Series C, 1.4 billion is no slouch in the market, especially by Series C, and yeah, that's a big one.
And they're an AI data security play. So, do you know much about what they do? Are they, a traditional AI security offering? Or are they more of the, hey, we were a data security product and now we're
Yeah.
layering AI into our solution?
Yeah, so I think I'm trying to remember. I mean, their Series C. I think
They got to have been around a while, right?
they predated DSPM, but I think they've always been data focused. So you know,
Yeah, the article
DSP.
describes them as an AI-based platform to help organizations understand the location and movement of all data in their networks. Critical for taking the right steps to secure that data, whether to defend against cyber attacks or keep it from inadvertently leaking into an LLM. So it's not an AI security play; it's
Right?
a data
No, it's not.
security play that uses AI.
Yes,
Which
correct.
which is the better, honestly, it's the better solutions right now. Like, AI security plays have a long way to go before they become very useful, but security
Mhm.
technologies that happen to use AI can become very useful very quickly.
Yeah, it's a in the short term at least a more compelling use case, I think. So yeah,
Yeah,
they
I
say
agree.
they do data discovery and classification, data security posture management, data detection and response, data access governance, and data privacy. It's a lot of stuff.
Well, it's needed. It's popular.
Especially with AI, right? Like most of the AI conversations I have, particularly if they're looking at using it in the enterprise, goes back to data hygiene and governance. And I think the big concern for a lot of companies is, okay, I'm going to roll out this internal virtual employee, like Microsoft Copilot, and people are going to realize they've got access to HR data or some kind of data they shouldn't have access to, and Copilot's going to be the spotlight or the magnifying glass that discovers that data for them, where they otherwise wouldn't have known that they had access to it.
Yeah, at the end of the day, data is what attackers want, right? They can hurt you by taking
Or
down
insiders.
infrastructure. Or insiders. I mean, malicious people, whether they're inside or external, doesn't really matter. But at the end of the day, data is what they want. Data is what they look to compromise. Data is what they look to ransom off. They can also do it by taking down your infrastructure and causing outages and other things. But data is the most common attack.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, solid. Like it's something I can get behind. I always, as an analyst, I said data would be the last thing we tackle just because it's so damn tricky. It's hard to wrap controls around data.
And
Like
here we are.
especially once data leaves the enterprise. Like you just consider it gone, right? It's
What I want to know though is what size of a company do you build with $460 million? Because that's the total invested capital now in
yeah.
3 years. Holy smokes! Do you really need that much? I keep getting shocked by the size of these raises. I just don't understand them. Even in a maybe in pre-ZERP era it makes sense, but post-ZERP I just can't wrap my head around why somebody needs all that money.
I mean, certainly classification is still a tough issue. I think pretty much everybody doing data classification these days are using machine learning models now. Nobody's using regex anymore, or if they're using regex, it's only in very straightforward use cases where regex can be effective. But yeah, I imagine you need some data scientists, some PhDs, maybe. There's I wonder how many patents these companies are pumping out, for that kind of funding. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know either. I don't know how you use that kind of money.
460 million is a lot of PhDs.
Well, I mean, an RSA booth is roughly 10% of that, right? So, there's some of it right there.
Right there, $46 million a year in marketing budget. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. So not too many funding items on here. Scrut Automation, kind of a weird uh, name until I realized that they're shortening scrutinize or inscrutable. Scrut is the root of that word, which means to
So
to look closely at something.
so wouldn't the name of their company be Scrut?
Scrut, yeah, yeah, probably pronounce it scrut.
I am Scrut.
I am screwed.
I am Scrut.
Yeah, branding is tough. Branding is tough.
Branding's impossible. There's never a good answer for branding. I'm just kidding. I only make fun of it because you called it Scrut and then said it's short for inscrutable. I'm like, well, wouldn't it be Scrut?
Right. So I pronounced it wrong. Yeah. No, you're totally right. Yeah, it looks like they're doing, God, they got a bunch of stuff listed here. I don't know how they have so many things so quick, but maybe these are just use cases. But smart GRC is trademarked, cloud security, risk management, vendor risk, employee awareness. Like, is this a SMB play? It's usually
Boil in the ocean.
SMBs,
It could be usually it's the SMB players that try to boil that ocean in
right?
one tool.
That's what I'm thinking.
Could be.
Um, I don't know.
Scrut
Yeah, I haven't had time
Automation.
to dive super deep into them. Scrut for startups is one of the things in their solution menu. So yeah, maybe not SMB, but startups. That makes sense too.
And it looks like they're in India, unless I've got the wrong one.
No, so they're. I think I saw that they're headquartered here, but a lot of their staff is in Bangalore, if I'm remembering correctly.
Mm-hmm. That's what it
Yeah.
looks like.
Right. Yeah, it looks like, yeah. So as a startup, like if you need ISO 27000, SOC 2, stuff like that, anything that can help you get there more quickly, it seems like maybe that's the sales pitch here to startups. So sales support.
Makes sense.
All right. Allure Security, another. So that was 10 million for Scrut, and another 10 million Series A for Allure Security here, led by a company called Kirkle. It's a fun name.
Oh,
But this is
interesting.
brand protection. So they're doing takedowns of websites, stood up to phish your users, social media protection, mobile app protection. So I was kind of surprised seeing an early stage startup in this space because most of the companies here have been acquired or are much older companies.
Yeah, it's when I read through this one, it's using machine learning, computer vision, and generative AI to automate the evaluation of tens of millions of digital assets each
Hmm.
day, allowing Allure Security to continue outperforming legacy brand protection methods by finding more online brand impersonations closer to initial setup across websites, social media, and mobile app marketplaces. So by layering in AI, they can do it faster,
Yeah.
better, cheaper, it sounds like.
That seems like something. Yeah, we actually had a guest on here. I've forgotten his name and the product, but they were using computer vision as a Chrome plugin, to where if you went to a site that was a fake version of your site, it could pop up, a big red banner and say, "This is not the Capital One website," or something like that. And it was
Hmm.
more consumer focused, I think, than enterprise focused, but it had an enterprise play there. So yeah, I mean that tracks. It's we've seen it work, and yeah, maybe they can do some disruption there, because that tends to be, online brand protection. Like once a company reaches a certain size, like I would say close to 90% of the Fortune 1000 have some kind of online brand protection product. So if
Really?
you
I
can
didn't
disrupt.
realize it was that widely deployed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for a specific kind of company, right? When you have a very public brand, like all the Constellation brands and Nabiscos of the world, companies who have
Sure.
lots of
CPG
brands and
stuff.
sites, banking, pretty much any financial institution with a portal with a login where somebody might want to fish that. So that all the big phishing targets, can make use of something like this.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, this has been around forever conceptually, right? As an idea, but it
Yep.
sounds like by layering in AI, they're able to do it faster and better and able to take these issues to the forefront of their customers in a faster manner. So hopefully they do it. And I mean, it's difficult when you're talking about time as a function of effectiveness of a business, right? I hear lots of pitches where people are like, well, I'll find 5% or 3% more vulnerabilities than the competition. Well, I don't really care as a buyer. I would rather have a usability improvement or a UI UX improvement that makes things easier to use over a 3% increase in efficacy of findings. And I wonder if this approach of faster, better, cheaper setting cheaper aside, is faster enough of a differentiator against those old components to cause a rip and replace if you're already in a mature market? That's the fundamental question about whether they'll be successful or not for me.
Yeah, it makes sense. And now we're going to launch into AI security startups. Number 4. How would you say that? How would you say number
Number
4?
4? Oh, okay. I would call it TrojAI.
Yeah, pretty much. That's how I would say it.
Or but it also depends. Is it Troj.ai is the website, or is it TrojAI.com? In which case I would call it TrojAI.
It is Troj.ai is the website.
Okay, so I think the company is called Troj.
Troj.
You
Okay.
got it, Scrut?
Scrut and Troj. We got Scrut and Troj. Wait till we get to the acquisitions. There's some fun
Ooh,
stuff going
let's
there too.
go.
But yeah, this is protecting the secure your AI models and applications from risks and attacks. So, prompt injection, I guess, poisoning, that kind of stuff is what I'm guessing here. They've got 2 products, TrojAI Detect and TrojAI Defend.
Hmm.
So they're still
I wonder
throwing
if
in the AI with the name of the products as part of the name of the products.
I wonder if Defend sits out front in line and looks for input style attacks like an AI based
It
firewall
does.
might
It
do.
does.
So
Data
that's
poisoning,
an
prompt injection. Yeah. Mhm.
so there's a couple different things here. Like the whole business model in the AI security space with regard to detecting biases or detecting poisoning, et cetera, by looking at the data set itself is kind of one problem. The other problem to me is an infrastructure security solution, right? Like I can get in line, I can be out in front, and I can proxy the requests and look for prompt injection, I can look for SQL injection, I can look for keywords, I can also proxy the outbound response and look for data disclosure, leakage, et
Yep.
cetera. But I don't know that I need a tool to do that. Can't I do that in my normal infrastructure communications patterns? So I think you'll see that that whole AI firewall, I'm calling it for lack of a better
Yeah.
term, folds into other infrastructure solutions
Oh
like
my God.
API security vendors,
So many
CDN
companies.
vendors, et cetera. Right.
Enterprise
Because you're
browser.
already there.
Yeah.
You're already in line. You're already in place. Now, that whole other solution, the whole kind of security of the training data itself and of the model itself, that's a different problem. But I think that the defend version of what they talk about, or the protect version, whatever they called it, I think that's going to be a hard one for them to crack open, because you're basically saying install yet another proxy tool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I bet we'll see at RSA this year the enterprise browsers going after that, SWIGs, anything that's in line with this stuff has an opportunity to inspect input and output.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. And my gut tells me the enterprise is just going to use what they've already got there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean that's if it works, right? It's it'll be interesting to see how this plays out because there's a lot of them. In fact, the next one here, we've got Prompt Armor is yet another one. And where is? Let me refresh this.
How it works. Oh, they got cool graphics on their website. 2 thumbs up for your website, guys. Great job. I like it. It's fancy.
Ah, yeah, I skipped number. Sorry, I skipped number 5. Let's talk about number 5 next.
Oh, okay. Well, and I take back my happy comment. We'll go look at number 5. Oh, Gnostic.
Yeah,
Good for these guys. I'm glad you included
Gnostic.
this one. These are good guys.
Yeah, so Neil Yu's a good friend. I don't know Gotti quite as well. I've met him a couple times, and we used to in the early days. I did some writing for a website he had. I think it was Security, something like that. Do you remember that website?
I don't remember that one.
Yeah. So yeah, interesting combination of founders here. Going after exactly that space we were just talking about. So this
But
is
they're doing something different. Um, they're doing something really interesting, and I have yet to get into brass tacks of how they're doing it with them, and I need to do that. But from my understanding is they're looking to reinvent the authentication or authorization component of AI LLM communication patterns. So instead of just being the filter of inline data or the sanitization of outbound data, or looking at the LLMs itself for poisoning, poisoning impacts and things like that, they're actually talking about reinventing how RBAC works and saying in the AI world, we don't necessarily need RBAC. We need something that is smarter. And
Yeah.
so because the answers are non-deterministic, we need an authentication pattern that is non-deterministic and can map to the answers. So if your secretary asks the same question as your CEO, how do you know to give back a different answer without a deterministic kind of? So I think what they're doing, and again, now this is conjecture because I only know this much about it. I think what they're doing is applying AI to the answers to determine whether it makes sense that that particular person should be
Yes.
allowed to get at that data,
Right.
which is a really unique take on a problem.
Yeah. So I mean, it is the thing, that we were just talking about. It is basically filtering the output, looking at the output and filtering it. But in doing that, yeah, you also have to connect to some sort of RBAC, to determine. And the way they pitch it is they say, look, like if you the way Sunil talks about this, if you go ahead and close off all the data in your organization, like if you think about it in almost like zero trust terms, you're killing a lot of productivity. Like maybe you're not allowed to see people's salaries, but you do want to be able to, like you're writing a report or something like that, or maybe it's even compliance, and you're showing pay equality or something like that. So you still need to
Sure.
get
Yeah.
some stats out of it. You need to get some insights, but you don't need to see individual people's salaries, tied to their salaries. So it's a different way of accessing data in which you can ask questions about it. You can, so that like, I don't know how you come up with the role-based access control on that though. That seems like a big rule set, right?
Well, I think that's the point. When you're talking about a potentially n level or infinite level matrix of um, accessibility permissions or models, that lends itself well to its own AI. So
Mhm.
is there a certain level of AI, metadata AI that you can layer on top? And
Right.
my gut tells me that's how they're approaching it. And if I know Sunil, he's the author of the Cyber Defense Matrix. He thinks very differently than your traditional kind of product engineer. And as CTO of this product, my gut tells me that's probably something like he would come up with. So again, there's a lot of conjecture in this commentary. I don't want to say what they're doing. Call them, email them, and ask them directly for their version of it. But I'm guessing it's something like that.
Yeah. And it's and you kind of you've got to get it right, right, or people will skip it and go right back to the old way of doing things, but it has a lot of promise, and they call it knowledge centric controls based on
Th-
business context and user need to know.
mhm. And
So
and that's
really,
the coolest thing. What really is going to make my mind explode is if they can pull this off, because you're asking it to make a deterministic answer, yes or no, the person can or can't have access to something from non-deterministic metadata based on non-deterministic answers.
right.
Massively hard problem. I hope they figure out, because if they do, it's going to be amazing results.
Well, it's going to unlock so much more productivity. Like this
Mhm.
is more than just a security solution. This is potentially, can give back a level of productivity that, you know, the way tech is designed, the way access controls and identities are designed, kind of took away.
I actually think in my head, it actually kind of gave me a light bulb moment where I think we're just scratching the surface on AI when it comes to first order usage of broad-based data or broad-based context. You collect data point A, data point B, data point Z, and you stitch those together into some kind of context, and you get these large quantities of context that you apply a holistic AI view onto to get a non-deterministic answer. Awesome, that's AI. But what happens when you take that non-deterministic answer, feed it back in as a new set of context, or create a superset of context that you then apply a new meta AI on top of? You start to get real unique use cases like this one that Gnostic has kind of outlined a little bit.
Well, and then we haven't even talked about the technical problem. Like we were talking about before, you got to plug in somewhere. You got to somehow get yourself in line, right? With the output.
Yeah, but that's easy because if you take that secondary superset and feed it back into a true RBOC, you can start to then block things and make changes kind of in a workflow approach after the decision has been made. So I
Right.
don't know. I think it's going to be super cool to track this one. And I
Yeah.
have to admit, I'm not impressed by much lately when it comes to cyber startups, but this one's got really cool ideas.
Yeah, that's the one that really struck me like I thought I was gonna see just another one of these like filter
Mhm.
input, but basically DLP in real time on LLM answers. And and he was like, no, open up access controls for the LLM so it can see all the data. And now you have a new layer of non-deterministic access control here. So yeah, I'm curious also see if they're actually using their own large language model. Because then you got to start worrying about latency and stuff depending on what the expectation is from the employee and how long it's going to take to get an answer back. But so cool if they can pull it off.
Well, they just came out of stealth. They're in the whatever the RSA launch thing is. I forget what it's called.
Uh,
But they just came out of stealth, but they've been at it for over a year and a half. So they've been putting a lot of
launch.
time into this Launchpad. That's right. They've been putting a lot of time into this thing. And I know they got a team of about 10 to 12, 15 people, something like that, that have been working on it for quite some
Yep.
time. Took in a few million of seed money and are now coming out of
Yeah,
stealth to really
3.3.
make an impact. Yeah.
Yeah, and I linked to their blog post, which talks more about Launchpad and talks more about the product. And I put that under number 5 there because the I think it's a Security Week article. Doesn't quite get into all the same levels of details, but that's Edward Kovacs, who I don't think we ever talked to on the show, but I swear he writes up almost every funding round, like for Security Week. He's prolific, like he's Caitlin Campanu level prolific.
I think he's an AI bot. Don't let him fool you. He's not real.
All right, now prompt armor. You were saying something nice about prompt armor.
I was?
Yeah, I think so. I think you were
Shows
complimenting.
you how. Oh, I like their website. I think their website's really
Oh,
sharp for a seed slash A company. I think they did a
mm.
really good job on the website. Now, as far as what the product does
Yeah,
and
the
stuff,
visualizations are nice.
Yeah, they're really cool. They did a great job on the website. I think the marketing team gets 2 thumbs up. That one person that you call your marketing person, you did awesome. At the end of the day, it's yet another uh, detection and response system tailor made for LLM applications and agents. I would love to know the differentiation and how they're different. I would love to do an episode one of these days where we bring in 3, 4, 5 of these guys and say, "Great,
Yeah,
run the gauntlet. Your
fight.
only question is to tell us how you're different. You have one question. You have 10 minutes to answer it. Go." And that would, I think, make an excellent piece of content because, like I said, there's the in front, there's the in LLM, and then you've even got the meta stuff. Now, if you really want to talk about that as a unique use case, what else can you do? I haven't heard of anybody doing different.
Yeah, anti-fraud, anti-abuse is going to be a big one. We've got a couple cases like that to talk about, like what happened to Canada Air and their
Mhm.
use of an LLM. But yeah, but it's kind of an extension of anti-bots and stuff like that. Like I kind of put it in that same anti-fraud category. Y-
I mean, you could sit in front of that one. That's a proxy answer, right?
Right.
That's the AI firewall
So
model.
that's AI as a service that you're running and exposing to the public.
Doesn't matter if well, sure. It doesn't matter if it's that model, if it's an internal LLM, or even if it's a call to a third party LLM like OpenAI. All of those will be just gateway proxied somehow, right? And
Mhm.
if you can get in line, that's one company that solves all of that problem, right?
Right.
So you give me something different beyond that. Give me a reason to believe that you're doing something other than that. Because if you're not, that gets folded into whatever I already have in line, whether it's my infrastructure firewalls, whether it's my API security tooling, whether it's my CDN. We're going to do the protections there.
Yeah. All right. So shifting to the acquisitions here, we'll come back to AI again. We can't get rid of it. It just keeps popping up every episode. But I was writing the intro here and I wrote Wiz acquires gem. And I was like, huh, that sounds like something that would happen in a D&D campaign, right? Wizard acquires gem. Wiz acquires
Ooh, what
gem.
does he do
And
with
then
the
I looked at
gem?
Veracode. Veracode acquires longbow. Still sounds like a D&D campaign.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
Gem does some cool stuff, though. I remember hearing about Gem a good year and a half, maybe 2 years ago now. Um, they developed a real time cloud detection and response
Yes.
mechanism, shortening the
CDR.
time to investigate and contain cloud native threats. I don't like that it's yet another stupid term, CDR, but okay, whatever. There's a number of companies that provide it, right? That's just another Gartner centric term. And it's about understanding the root causes of cloud breaches. And there's a number of companies now that do this, including Permiso is similar, Gem, and there's a handful of other companies. So it's both simultaneously a great exit for them. 350 million on what I don't know, but I'm going to shoot in the dark and say it was sub 20 or 30 million of ARR. Definitely sub 20 or 30 million of ARR. Um,
Mm.
and say good exit for them, right? Good way to get connected. I think it makes sense to sit with Wiz, who's already the collector of all of that asset information, the CSPM data, the runtime protection data, and now they give you the ability to respond to problems. Does Wiz become one of our 4 centers of gravity for the one ring to rule them problem? Probably, right? I think they're one of the companies that will sit in cloud security as a broad storyline and look to collect massive quantities of data and apply holistic security over the top of them. So I think it's a great fit. Really cool acquisition.
Yeah, and I did have to poke a little fun here because the uh, Orcas and Wiz and Lacework, their early marketing campaigns were pointing out how terrible it is to to build products through acquisition. Basically pointing at they were competing with Prisma and Palo Alto at that point had bought like 6 cloud security companies and
Mhm.
was putting them all together in as Prisma. So it's just I'm that guy is like, remember when you said this was a bad thing?
Well, not only that, but some of them also competed with Wiz early
Yeah,
on until Wiz showed them how to absolutely run over and just take over and dominate a market. And then
yeah,
then they ended up doing. I hesitate to use the word pivot because they didn't pivot too hard, but they
right.
pivoted enough that they could become an adjacent space to the dominant play that Wiz had made. And then Wiz was like, "Hey, great job, good pivot. We're going to just buy you."
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and detection and response is we're seeing that in a couple markets. Like in the SSPM market, that's what Obsidian originally did was detection and response. They were the only ones. I think they were a little early to market, and they pivoted a bit to do SSPM. But still have the detection and response piece. So, yeah, detection and response is eventually something we've got to get to with a lot of these product categories.
Yeah, and we
Uh,
didn't even really talk about the Longbow acquisition by Veracode in any depth. Um, But another storyline that I don't think you have referenced in our show notes here is that Veracode got a new CEO in the last week as well.
oh,
Sam
okay.
King stepped down as CEO, and I don't remember the new guy's name. I'll get it here in about 3 seconds. Of Brian Roche stepped up as the new CEO of Veracode, and then about a week after that, they announced the acquisition. Not even a week, like 3 days after that, they announced the acquisition of Longbow. So Brian Roche had been, I forget what he'd been, but he'd been there a handful of years, many, many years as chief product officer, and has finally stepped into Sam's shoes as she's stepping down after 17 years at the company. I had the pleasure of working directly for Sam many, many moons ago. I love her. She's fantastic, as good as they come. I hope she has done this out of her own free will and is ready to go on to some wonderful next steps for herself.
So I'm a child and I just absolutely love Longbow's website. I put a link in our Slack back channel and you have to go to the website and scroll.
It's another one of those cartoon style ones like Permiso.io, which I love. Oh, yeah, look at this. Okay, remember that comment about, the other one being a good website? This is better.
Okay, and I could describe it more, but yeah, I think our listeners should just go to the website and experience it for themselves. But it's a really cool animation that also kind of drives a point. does a very effective job at driving a point about what they
Yeah,
do.
Adrian, if you didn't go to it, go to the product section of the website. It's
Okay.
even better.
Yeah, I like that.
Yep, it's fantastic.
That's
Finally,
such,
some good
you know
marketing we're seeing on here. I like it.
cute graphics. You get points. It's great, but cute graphics that make it easier to understand what you do. That's you get top marks.
Absolutely.
Good job, Longbow. Yeah. So basically, so I mean, this is well, let's put that to the test, right? This is kind of reminds me a bit of the risk-based vulnerability management market where they're saying you've already got all this data, like let's make sense of it, let's prioritize it, let's get to root cause analysis and things like that. Except this is focused more on the AppSec side of things.
Yeah, you know what?
AppSec and
I almost took a dive into the ASPM application security posture management market a few years ago or a year or two ago. Um, it feels like this was probably an originally a design like that, where it's like, hey, let's take all of your AppSec asset data, all of your AppSec vuln data, and enrich the vuln data with true asset data to give you value. So it's more about understanding what your AppSec program really looks like at any moment and what the right next best thing to do is given what you have in your environment.
I mean, so where's this going, Tyler? Like we've got a lot of these give me all your data and I'll make sense of it companies out here. Like you've talked about, is it the data lake?
Yeah, bud.
sh- should I have a Kenna, a Longbow, and a Jupiter One, or should just one of those products be doing the job for me? Like,
Adrian, this is the one ring to rule them question that I've expounded on here multiple times about, and that you convinced me is not actually one ring, but maybe four or five rings that
yeah,
kind of operate in isolation. And so maybe that whiz gem is a combination is an example of the start of one kind of center of gravity, right? Center of gravity of cloud sec. This is a center of gravity of app sec, and then we'll have other centers of gravity around, say, endpoint. Around maybe infrastructure, maybe I don't know. I think that may even just remain in cloud sec, but there's four or five of these things that in the short to mid term will become the centers of gravity. And then the fundamental question is, if you have the crystal ball and you're looking 5 to 10 years out, is there the bigger play of one true ring to rule them? But
yeah,
I do agree with you that within the next 5 to 7 years, it's about four or five centers of gravity. So wouldn't it be nice? I was talking to an enterprise CISO recently. I said, wouldn't it be nice if you could just buy 5 products and that's it? He's like, that'd be
yeah,
amazing. Like I would do that in a heartbeat. So if these guys can do these roll-ups like we're talking about and pitch it to, Bank of America or insert big financial here, they'll give you 5 million a year for four different centers of gravity.
yeah. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and it's man, that product page once you get down to the solution overview, that's just such a good graphical representation of what the goal is with products like this.
Yep.
Where they show all the data sources, and goes into this analysis system, and prioritizes the findings and finds the root causes and yeah, just dilutes it all down. Be great if we can get it working. I don't care if it's one ring or multiple. Like achieving this at any level is a big win.
Yeah, it's a big win. And then the best part about it is when you have the massive data sets and you overlay it with a holistic AI based system to review it, you're going to find stuff better, faster, and more accurately than ever before.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. So I kind of skipped it because it didn't fit with everything else. But going back to number 7, I can't tell if this is just Eclipsium talking about their technology or if this is a product that they're going to be selling. But they basically talk about what do they call it? They call it Eclipsium Automata binary analysis system. So this is it reminds me of FireEye's original product, right? Like we had this whole category of products that would take a piece of malware, pull it apart, determine if it's malicious or not, and give you all this data about the binary. Seems like they're doing that. They're automating that at scale. and particularly, because this is like an IoT firmware focused company. They're focusing it on new firmware releases. So the concern here being supply chain attacks, right? Like how do we detect the next solar winds, the next XZ, those kinds of things in a programmatic, automated way.
Isn't this what Veracode did with their binary analysis engine in 2008? They just, never got it to the, I guess, the amount of scale and automation. And that's the
Yeah.
fundamental difference that Eclipsium did. And they targeted they being Veracode targeted it towards traditional code as opposed to firmware and ITOT style applications. But fundamentally, it's an automated reverse engineering system for vulnerabilities and detection of risk.
With LLMs now, if this thing is truly fully automated, say it detects something at 3 in the morning, right? And you can have an LLM write up the blog post and, oh, look, a new blog post on a new threat, like, and a human hasn't touched it yet.
Well, I mean, I think I told you this before, but I got pitched 2 weeks ago by a company that does automated code remediation. So they actually write the code, kick it into the pull request for you, and all you have to do is click accept. So take that one step further.
Yeah.
If they actually implemented that at 3 in the morning, they detect the attack. It automatically creates a pull request, hits the developer, wakes them up at 3:30 after the code has been fixed, and says, "Do you want to accept this?" And the dev in
Yeah.
his half sleep stupor looks at his phone and goes, "Yeah, that looks good. Accept. Your bug is fixed."
Yeah. Yeah. That would be amazing. All right, so we've got some great essays here. I don't know if you got a chance to look at any of these. Generally, I don't dive too deep into the essays. This is more of a like a recommended reading for our listeners. So go to the show notes, check out. We've got a good one from Daniel Miessler. It is really just a description of something that already exists, but it's interesting going into the thought exercise of how we describe it. Have you read this one, Tyler?
Which number is that? I'm looking for it.
10. Efficient
Oh,
security principle.
no, I haven't read this one yet. Nope.
And so basically, it's saying, look, the reason why security problems don't go away is because we can tolerate a certain amount of security problems. Security problems can exist, companies can still be profitable, people can still use their products. Yes, bad things happen, but we mostly absorb them. And that's so he's kind of describing setting this principle in place to describe the baseline that exists. And if we can't live with it, then that raises the baseline, right?
Yeah, I
Acceptable.
think yeah, it's interesting. I think I've often said it, but I've looked at it from a different angle. I've looked at it from an incentives angle. And what I describe it
Right.
as, if we're creating something or building something, we don't actually want security. I mean, we have to have it. So we want
Mhm.
it in so much as we have to have it. But the reality is we only need as much as we need to achieve our next end goal on the business or on the technology creation itself. So what I've often called this is minimum viable security, MVS. What is the minimum viable security we can put into the product to achieve the goals we want on the business side? And I think
Exactly.
it's a very similar principle of what's the least we can do and still win, right? Because otherwise that is an opportunity cost of resources, money, time, people, et cetera, that could have been applied to the original goal as opposed to putting security into play. So I have a similar theory. I call it MVS, but he calls it ESP, and I think it's spot on.
It kind of reminds me of so I get into motorsports, about how rules and safety regulations increase basically by people dying. If you go back to the 50s, it was gruesome. I watched a new what was it? I forget what it was called. Ferrari movie that came out.
Oh yeah, I want to see that. Yeah.
Yeah, the one that is kind of focused around the figure of Enzo Ferrari, and it's one of those movies like Saving Private Ryan that I could not watch a second time because it does show some of the violence of some of these
Ooh,
crashes and the
ouch.
loss of life and stuff like that. And yeah, so if you're gonna watch it, be prepared for body parts and stuff like that. It has some gruesome scenes in it. and it's if you follow that, like you know, the seat belts, you know, you know, they start out with goggles, they don't even have helmets on. It's just it's basically a tube with an engine in it and wheels, you know, uncovered wheels. And you go to fast forward to today, where loss of life is almost never happens, because they've polished it to a point where now we have the halo in F1 cars and things like that. You know, they've got seat restraints, there's cushioning, you know, there's supercomputers used to analyze the G forces and what it does to their body, and what we need to prevent them from that from happening. Right after a crash happens, we know how many G's the impact was, because there's a sensor for that. And if it's above a certain number of G's, they've got a required trip to the hospital, and they're going to get CAT scans and all that kind of stuff to check them out, make sure they didn't have any micro concussions or regular concussions or anything like that.
I mean, you could
And
it's the same thing with sports, right? Football,
yeah,
hockey, right? Those guys
safety
never wore
gear.
helmets when they first started, and, you know, they
Yeah,
put on little ear pads just to protect their ears, and that was it, right? And,
yeah.
you know, I think these things just build over time as you realize what the risks really are.
But unfortunately, it seems just the way that we operate. You know, the failures occur first, and then we build to prevent future ones. You know,
So
so it's
I wonder if we brought in, like, a physical, architectural engineer, if somebody who knew the history of building buildings or building
yeah,
bridges, if we had a
right.
similar storyline.
Hammurabi's code and all that. Like if if your building falls then and kills somebody's kid, then you know your kid gets killed, right?
Well, I'm thinking about is, like, you know, what did the process hundreds of years ago when we started building bridges or buildings, tall buildings, whatever, what did that process look like? Did they collapse often? Did they fail because we didn't know how to properly build
Like
walls?
Tyler chose the shortest straw. You go across first. You're first across the bridge. All
You
right,
walk
jump
across.
down on
Good
it.
luck. But no, what I mean by that is, so when one does collapse, right? When one does collapse, you learn from it and you say, okay, we have to build them this tall or this wide or this thick or using these materials, and it gets better and better over time. So I wonder if historically, like, how long did it take before we got to a situation where the risk level of buildings and bridges was low enough to say, hey, we can mass deploy these? And are we in that stage of software? Where are we in that evolutionary cycle from a software perspective, right? If we were
Yeah.
to match them up, I mean, it'd be an interesting research project.
Well, and then you reach a certain point, you know, I think it was maritime shipping. It was commercial shipping of goods via boats that gave, you know, where the invention of insurance came out. And I think it was even uh, a Scotsman, you know, that came up with it, you know, as many inventions have. And, and yeah, you reach that point where you're like, okay, like some losses are still going to occur, right? Like we can't prevent all of them. So, you know, we're going to create this financial uh, function, you know, that'll lessen the impact of those losses.
Insurance.
Yeah,
But the other one I want to talk about, Adrian, is I do want to talk about. I didn't know if you were going to, so I'm going to draw us to it real
go
quick.
for
Is
it.
lucky versus repeatable?
Yeah,
Uh, Number 12.
yeah, I
This
like
is
that.
just a fundamental um, philosophical question that I think every philosophy 101 class in college should address. And I don't know the answer to it. And I often have asked it because, you know, I've been rather lucky in my career, right? But how much of it is luck and how much of it is opportunistic preparedness, and how much of it is becoming repeatable based off of knowledge learned and preparation for when that opportunity or that lucky moment strikes again, right? And it's such a cool article. I really enjoyed this article. um, I often say, if you do it once, could be luck. You do it twice, maybe not. You do it three times, it's probably not luck. You probably
Right.
figured something out, right? But that's kind of how I blend that down. And if you roll that into the cyber markets and you roll that into like investing in cyber, how much of that is luck and how much of that is repeatable? Well, there's people that have built entire multi millions, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of results on the back of repeatable in that space. So kind of a cool concept to kick around.
Yeah. Yeah, and he uses a lot of great examples, you know, that he uses to kind of test, you know, his theory around, you know, things like, you know, Amazon. Could you build Amazon a second time? You know, probably not. could Warren Buffett, even redo what he did a second time? A lot of it was just the environment that these guys started in, and who they were and where they were, and what skills they had at that point in time. Like a lot of it is environmental.
Yeah, it's about preparedness. What is it? Luck is when preparedness meets opportunity.
Yeah, yeah. All right, we've also got there's so a couple other essays here. Learning from the front lines of data privacy and security. This one is from Subsalt. I'm not familiar with Subsalt, but it's a really good. I didn't read part 1 and 2, but part 3 is pretty good. So I will probably go back and try out the other ones. But yeah, really good primer on different privacy challenges. Like, is your data really anonymized? They go back and they talk about back in 2006 the Netflix prize, when they thought they had anonymized 500,000 users and 100 million movie ratings, and then some researchers were able to de-anonymize those by using other data sources, using IMDb at the time. So I thought that was fascinating. That's something that would never occur to me. De-anonymizing using data that you don't have but exists out there.
Yeah, privacy is always an interesting thing because I mean, this has been something that I've heard spoken about in circles for probably better part of 2 decades. Is that any piece of private data, given enough metadata or can conjoin data or secondary adjacent data, basically your original private data is no longer private when you have enough of that you can
Yeah.
enrich it and figure it out. Right now, I bet you there's a really cool computer science research academic style paper out there to be written about how many data components you need 1 to n
Mm.
mapping before you get fully
To
enriched, and then it
de-anonymize
becomes
probably already
to
exists.
de-anonymize.
Yeah.
It probably does. There's probably some PhD results paper out there that touches on this topic, and I'd love to actually, if any of the audience has read it or has seen it, please send it my way. I'd love to read it. But um, at what point does privacy no longer work? Right, when you have massive tomes of data. And again, take it into the AI picture. Could you imagine now if we used AI to do these types of analyses instead of just the type of research that they did? Actually do it with AI, you could probably flop the answer in minutes instead of years of research or months of research.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's yeah, what AI can do, like the speed of what it can do is going to change a lot of this stuff. Almost like quantum, like how quantum is going to, requires us to find some new encryption algorithms for certain types of encryption. I think AI is doing that as well. It's, we got to revisit best practices for a lot of things now.
That's an excellent point. I think privacy needs to be revisited in the era of AI for sure.
Mhm. All right, we've got a excellent essay from Katie, who is not with us today. I forget what she's up to today, but she couldn't make it. And her latest essay, AI has flown the coop, but not for the U.S. government. I have not read this one yet. Have you read this one, Tyler?
I did. I had the pleasure of putting this particular article out on the Cyber Y, so I did an editing pass on it, and the high level version of what she's talking about is the ban from um, Catherine. I can't pronounce the last name. Spinder, S-Z Pinder, Spinder. I guess it's silent Z, from the House of Representatives Chief Administrative Office. That data privacy and citing data privacy and national security concerns that Microsoft's AI chatbot on will be banned from all House issued devices and blocked on all managed Windows devices within the government. So, well, what she means by the title is essentially, hey, AI is out there for the whole world except the US government. The US government says, we're not going to allow that. And the reason is exactly what we're talking about, is the leaking of potentially private and risky data into these third-party LLMs, these third-party uh, AI-based systems. Even though now many of them claim they don't collect the data from submitted prompts and things like that. Yeah, it was a call for. I don't know if they called for or they actively banned. I think they actively banned Microsoft Copilot. Now she does call out in the article. Um, Maybe it was just Microsoft. right?
No,
Maybe
they
this
had
is
a ban on ChatGPT previous to this.
okay. But she calls out in the article a little bit of, hey, it might have also had to do with the fact that, the US government doesn't particularly care for Microsoft these days with
Right.
some of the monopoly and antitrust style issues that are coming out of Microsoft. But
They're still using them
neither here
though.
nor there. Yeah, neither here nor there whether that's real. At the end of the day, the government doesn't trust AI yet. So,
Yeah.
the government tends to be one of the later ones to ever adopt these types of technologies. So, it doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. All right. And then number 14 is an interesting one. Really long read. Maybe longer than it needs to be, but it's still excellent. It's got lots of great examples in it. It's all about customer love, which I tend to associate with PLG because if I'm not mistaken, I think Thinkst was the first to come up with this idea to have a page in a website dedicated to just unsolicited love put out into the public space, usually tweets, LinkedIn updates, people just saying, "I love this product so much," and them just linking to that, basically embedding that in a web page. And people ask, you know, who are your competitors? Who's using your product? You can just point them to this page, and it's a pretty effective endorsement, pretty effective marketing tool to be able to just say, "Hey, we didn't ask him to say any of this stuff. Look at this."
Yeah, it's extremely effective. However, not everybody's so blessed, right?
Right.
Thinks Canary is a good example, a great example of this. They leverage this to, have stellar growth on the back of these. Essentially, what amounts to public customer recommendations or public customer love, right? Even just to keep it in a very simplistic view. Um, but here's the thing: most of the time, customers, even if they love you, don't take the time to put those results out, right? Like
Yeah.
most enterprise companies have to beg customers, the best customers they have that actually tell them they love them all the time. We have to go
Yeah.
beg them to put up a G2 review or to put up a peer insights review, right? We have to beg them to make public commentary. They don't want to, they don't care to. And again, it comes back down to incentives. What's the incentive as a buyer of an enterprise security product? What's my incentive to say I love you?
Yeah. And
Very
and
little.
they and in addition to Thinks, there's Chain Guard material, which I think was the first one after Thinks that I saw adopt this. Impart and Anvalogic. So there's now
Yep.
5 examples of cybersecurity companies with love pages, dedicated love pages.
So I can love pages. That sounds great.
Love
I can
pages.
tell you, I know 3 of the 4 of those personally. I won't tell you which ones, but I know 3 of them very well personally, and majority of the time it has to do with a very charismatic and amazing founder
Founder,
who
leader.
they
Yeah.
love the founder. They love the leader. They love what they stand for and what they represent. And they're
Mhm.
willing to stand up alongside that founder and be connected to them because they like the brand of that founder. They like what that founder does and represents. Um, it's much harder if you don't have that. Much harder.
I don't know all 5 of these companies, but the ones I do know, the other thing they seem to have in common is their products are simple, polished, and just work. Like they're very easy to
Well
implement.
designed.
Yeah. Mhm. So a lot of
Well
it,
designed.
I
Yeah.
think the product is another essential piece there because I've seen other charismatic founders that probably could not get this. Like as a SIM vendor, I don't see you having a love page unless you really crack that code. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it's a poor example, but like the traditional SIM,
Yeah.
I don't know
Nobody loves
anybody
Sim.
who loved their SIM vendor after spending 6 weeks setting it up.
Hey, if I get enough interest and enough DMs on the CyberWhy, I will start a page called "I Love Splunk," and everybody can actually put their well wishes to Splunk. If anybody has any, please send them to me, and I will make a page called "I Love Splunk" on the CyberWhy. I don't think I'll get many.
All right, a few other interesting things here. I'm going to try and wrap up here, and we're going to use number 15 as our squirrel story here today, Tyler. But I'm just going
Okay.
to summarize some of the other ones here. Number 16, AI bots hallucinate software packages and devs download them. So this is basically like a typo squatting opportunity. Somebody noticed that the same packages tend to be hallucinated when somebody asks for code. So why don't I just create that package, right? And when it hallucinates it,
Yeah.
it's no longer going to be a hallucination. There'll be a real package. So it's basically like a reverse typo squatting situation. I thought that one was funny.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. That could have made Squirrel Story of the Week for sure.
yeah, yeah, I guess you're right. Number 19, supply chain researchers observe Visual Studio code extensions stealing users' sensitive data.
Hmm.
So again, similar, the supply chain plugins, stuff like this, it's going to be really tough. Most of these AI tools coming out, Copilot's no exception. Tons and tons of plugins are going to connect these things to other things, and some of them are going to be malicious.
It's all
Google
going to
has to
roll together.
delete billions of browsing records and that they collected when people were using incognito mode.
Thank God.
Pretty
I
funny.
mean, oh, wait, did I say that out loud? Never mind. Never mind. Continue.
Uh, I, I've never used
Me either.
incognito mode. I don't
Me
know
either.
what you're
I
talking.
don't even know what it is. I don't even know what you're talking about. Go ahead.
I don't know if we're not going to talk about this long enough to put up a dumpster fire graphic, but Microsoft has had another breach.
Surprise, surprise, surprise. Didn't see that coming.
I still have a blog post to write about the breach 3 breaches ago. So, like, just slow it down, please. Let me catch up.
Hey, and then you wonder why Microsoft Copilot is banned from the federal government.
Really interesting vulnerabilities found. So number 18, basically one of the formats they use for AI models, I understand, is called Pickle, which is basically Pickle is the Python term that they use in Python for serialization.
Mhm.
And apparently you can execute code from it. Like you can put together malicious AI models, put them up on Hugging Face, and get people to execute those models and execute your code.
Ooh.
So whatever infrastructure you're running those models on, this is now something you have to worry about, particularly with the pickle format. Like there are more secure formats, but my girlfriend is in the uh, not the AI space, but HPC. Her background is HPC, which means that she has done a lot of stuff with AI. So a lot of the terminology and stuff here, I had to turn to her to understand. But really good research by Wiz here, and they get to be in the news twice today because they've got some cool research here.
I
But
just
really
love that
good.
you had to I just love that you had to ask your wife about pickle.
A
Just
girlfriend.
or not wife, girlfriend, sorry. You had to ask your girlfriend what a pickle was. I just love that. It just has so many,
Yeah,
wonderful
yeah,
connotations that we
yeah.
could discuss
Unfortunately,
on
we
the
don't
show.
have enough time for you to run away with that. We're going to jump to number 15, which will be our final story. This will be our squirrel story, though I didn't label it a squirrel story. So, Air Canada created a custom GPT, basically a support GPT. And honestly, I think this is LLM is huge for support stuff. Point a custom LLM, custom GPT, whatever you want to call it, at your knowledge base, at your support scripts, and everybody will experience less pain. That nobody wants to wait on hold. The people you eventually get after being on hold don't really seem like they want to talk to you. I don't want to talk to them either. I think this is a huge win for this technology, but there's some problems, and one of those emerged when an Air Canada customer wanted to get a refund on a ticket. They basically talked the LLM into creating a refund policy and promising them a refund. Air Canada refused to refund the money, and the customer took them to court, and the court said you have to honor this refund policy that your AI chatbot invented.
I mean, it's operating as in effect a human's role, right? So you're responsible for what it says. And if one of your human, let's say that was a human on the other side of that, said, "Hey, yeah, here's our refund policy. We're going to send you a refund," you'd have to stand up for that refund. So I don't think
Gu-
it's a bad thing.
Guess what happened to the AI chatbot?
It got fired, got shot, got let go.
Yeah, it has been shut down.
The same thing that would have happened to the human had they said that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, probably. Yeah, good point. But yeah, it got fired. So yeah, this is at the heart of a lot of the conversations or that I'm having around AI, particularly around custom GPTs. It's amazing how you can talk to it like a human. It's got some memory. You can misspell your questions. You can use bad grammar. It figures it out. Amazing. But then the other side of that is you can distract it. You can confuse it. You can get it off topic. And that's where a lot of the AI security companies we're talking about are trying to figure out how to put some guardrails there.
All these amazing advancements in AI, the ability to do amazing things, act like humans, understand human language, and freaking Google Home still can't play a song when I ask it. Come on, Google Home.
I know, right? Like it's I think it's coming. Apple's making its big AI announcement in June, I think. But it sounds like they're still unsure on what they're going to be announcing because the rumor is they're in talks with Google to use their Gemini. So, but yeah,
I don't
all
know.
these virtual assistants need to be ripped and replaced.
Oh my
ASAP.
gosh, they all need to be taken outside and shot, just like the Chat GPT system of that airline. They just need to be destroyed and start over.
All right, this has been fun, Tyler. Thank you for joining me on the news today. It's been a blast.
Pleasure as always to see you, Adrian. Thank you for having me on.
And a big thanks to everyone watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. We will see you, I believe, next week. Yeah, we'll see you next week. Pretty sure. 93% sure.